Hi everyone, welcome to Romance Stories. Before watching the video, please give me a like and subscribe. Thank you very much. I have cared for my amnesiac wife for 6 years, never imagining she would transform back into a decisive corporate leader. When she finally woke up, the first thing she did was force a divorce on me to make room for her true love. Little did she know, I wanted it just as much as she did. When I signed the divorce papers, her face darkened instantly. "I was only testing you," she snapped. "Why did you actually sign it?" Upon returning from the hospital, the first thing Lydia did was hurl the divorce agreement at me and demand my signature. However, perhaps fearing the public backlash of being labeled an ungrateful, heartless climber, she included a clause stating the divorce would only take effect after 1 year. This meant I had to play the part of her husband for another 12 months. Looking at the contract, I had to admire the sheer audacity of her thick skin. If my ancestors had built the Great Wall using material as thick as her ego, they would have finished the job in half the time. My parents, however, pleaded with me not to cross her. They claimed that every wealthy person has their flings. As long as she doesn't bring them home, just close your eyes and ignore it, they urged. "Julian, what are you doing? Just stay by Lydia's side. Once she's bored with her games outside, she'll come back to you." I responded with a cold laugh and a shake of my head. "Mom, Dad, you find it easier to believe I was the reincarnation of an ancient emperor than to believe she actually cares about me. You truly disappoint me. If Lydia had even a shred of genuine affection for me, that divorce agreement wouldn't be sitting on the table." Years ago, while competing for the succession of the Low Group, Lydia was sabotaged, ending up in a car accident that left her with the mental capacity of a 5-year-old. Among all the elite heirs, she had chosen me, a man from an ordinary civil servant family, to be her legal husband. Under the constraints of our marriage contract, I had cared for her with my whole heart for 5 long years. But looking back now, perhaps it was all part of her master plan. The succession war within the Low family was incredibly dangerous. Yet she, the amnesiac bystander, was the one who emerged unscathed as the ultimate victor. Now that her goal has been achieved, she no longer needs to keep playing house with someone like me who doesn't belong in her world. On the eve of her officially taking control of the company, she stood before me in a high-end gown, looking sophisticated, regal, and ice-cold. Every gesture of hers seemed perfectly calculated. She called my name, Julian, with an air of complete indifference. From that moment on, the timid little girl who used to clutch my sleeve and sweetly call me brother was gone forever. Perhaps Lydia was afraid I would cling to her and refuse to let go. Even though she was the one who demanded we wait a year to finalize the divorce, she constantly warned me not to fantasize about things that didn't belong to me. And so, as the husband in name only, I was forced to watch Lydia and her true love flaunt their affection in front of me every single day. The day Victor moved into Lydia's villa, the entire house was decorated as if they were celebrating a wedding. Lydia truly lived up to her reputation as a powerful CEO. With a wave of her hand, she provided Victor with a wardrobe of custom-tailored suits and high-end sports cars. Fearing he might be mistreated by outsiders, she favored him publicly. Anyone unaware of the truth would have assumed he was the official husband. In reality, it didn't matter. My status had always been a hollow title. Since taking the helm of the Low Group, Lydia had seemingly forgotten I existed, spending every waking moment by Victor's side. While playing games, my friends often voiced their outrage on my behalf over the voice chat. Seeing them gnash their teeth in anger made me chuckle. "Why do you guys seem more upset than me? I'm the one actually living through it." Nathan let out a snort of contempt. "I grew up with you, Julian. I know exactly how you are. Even if someone stepped on your head, you'd keep that stoic, indifferent face. Everyone, unless they're brain dead, saw how you treated Lydia over the years. When people called her a fool to her face, you were the one who stepped up to protect her. You endured years of mockery and insults for her sake," Nathan continued, his voice rising in anger. "And now she treats you like this just for some other guy? She's an ungrateful snake." I knew my friends were indignant about my situation, but I truly didn't care that much. Regarding Lydia's attitude, I only felt a fleeting sigh at the unpredictability of life. I decided to change the subject. "I'm thinking of looking for a new job lately. Any suggestions?" "Actually, my company is hiring," Nathan replied, his excitement returning. "I remember you studied administrative management. Why don't you come in for an interview? I have to tell you, Our boss is an absolute stunner. Who knows? Maybe you'll strike up a romance with the lady boss herself. He couldn't stop praising her, insisting she was a peerless beauty, refined, sophisticated, and loyal. He even went as far as comparing this lady boss to Lydia, emphasizing how virtuous and devoted she was. If I didn't know Nathan so well, I would have suspected his boss had bribed him to play matchmaker. I simply smiled and joked, "All right, I'll take that blessing. Wish me luck." In truth, I didn't take his words to heart. I figured that with only 1 year left on my marriage contract with Lydia, as long as nothing went sideways, my life would eventually return to normal. However, trouble has a way of finding me, even when I'm trying to stay invisible. As I was about to head out, I stumbled upon Lydia and Victor being intimate in the living room. They were locked in a deep kiss. As a complete outsider, my presence was beyond awkward. I immediately turned to leave, but suddenly heard Victor's voice. "Oh, isn't that Julian? Where are you off to?" This was my first time officially facing Victor head-on. He was undeniably handsome, barely in his early 20s with fox-like eyes that carried a seductive charm. If I were a woman, I might not have been able to resist the urge to pull him into an embrace myself. But my attention was caught by the prominent hickey on his collarbone. It wasn't hard to guess what he and Lydia had been up to last night. Actually, I didn't even need to look. Living under the same roof, the sounds drifting into my room every night were crystal clear. After Victor called my name, Lydia finally seemed to notice me. She turned around, her face etched with clear annoyance. It seemed I had indeed interrupted their fun. Knowing my place, I didn't step forward. From a distance, I offered a brief apology. "I was just heading out to grab a bite. Sorry for disturbing you too. My bad, I'm leaving now." However, my submissiveness wasn't enough for Victor. He gently rubbed his cheek against Lydia's hand, his eyes downcast with a melancholic look. "Does Julian not like me? Why does he always want to run away the moment he sees me? Did I do something wrong?" Lydia immediately comforted him with a kiss. "Who on earth could dislike you, Victor?" Then, she shot me a fierce glare. "Get over here and apologize to him right now." I obediently walked over and lowered my head, trying to diminish my existence as much as possible, determined to play the role of an invisible background prop. "Sister Lydia, am I that ugly?" Victor continued his pathetic act, as if the atmosphere wasn't awkward enough. "Julian won't even look at me once." He wrapped his arms around Lydia's neck, as if he were about to stage a heartbreaking scene right then and there. "What nonsense are you talking about? Our Victor is the most adorable boy in the world. Only a blind person would fail to see how attractive you are." As she said this, Lydia's eyes never left mine, as if she were afraid I wouldn't realize the blind person she was referring to was me. I was no stranger to that look. In the first year of our marriage, a young lady from the Lowe family went out of her way to make things difficult, speaking provocatively to Lydia in front of everyone. After I cut her down with sarcasm, she was so enraged she raised her hand to slap me. Back then, Lydia shielded me and screamed at her, "No one is allowed to bully my Julian." At that time, the look Lydia gave that woman was exactly the same as the look she was giving me now. Cold, disgusted, and full of warning. I just never imagined that the girl who once swore to protect me would now use that same fierce protection for someone else. I stood there silently, doing nothing, yet I had to shoulder the blame for disliking Victor without cause. Lydia's blatant favoritism made Victor beam instantly. He looked at her tenderly and said, "I know, sister. You've always been so good to me." Yes, Mr. Victor and Miss Lydia are truly affectionate. Anyone would agree you're a perfect match. I chimed in, desperate to escape this den of drama. But perhaps it was just my imagination. After I said that, Lydia's gaze seemed to grow even sharper. Maybe she was recalling the time when she was just a fledgling heiress, forced to endure discomfort and oppression. My mind began to wander, but I reminded myself not to become the focus of this situation. Contrary to Lydia's reaction, Victor seemed extremely satisfied with my words. "Julian, you certainly have a way with words. Weren't you going to eat? Go on, then. Don't let your stomach stay empty." Seeing that he was finally letting me off the hook, I forced a smile. "Then I won't bother you two any longer. I'm leaving now." Throughout the rest of the exchange, Lydia didn't say another word. All her attention seemed devoted to Victor in her arms. This outcome was exactly what I had expected. I only hoped this 1 year would pass quickly so I could leave them behind forever. I failed to notice that as I turned to leave, the gaze Lydia fixed on my retreating back grew dark and gloomy, as if harboring something incomprehensible. She hid it skillfully, so skillfully that even Victor thought she was simply annoyed that I had interrupted them, oblivious to her momentary lapse in a deep thought. When I returned home, Victor was nowhere to be seen. I scanned the living room and found no sign of Lydia either, immediately assuming they wouldn't be coming back tonight. But just as I turned to head upstairs, a low, cold voice sliced through the silence from behind the sofa. I didn't realize my absence made you so happy. I spun around to find Lydia leaning back against the sofa. Her gaze was sharp and icy, appearing even more dangerous in the shadows. I thought to myself, who stays in a pitch-black room wearing all black on a sofa like this? Keeping my face neutral, I approached her. "Miss Lydia, why are you home without the lights on?" Lydia suddenly grabbed my shoulder, her eyes chilling. "Julian, have you forgotten that we are still husband and wife?" She looked displeased. I guessed her bad mood stemmed from me accidentally witnessing her intimacy with Victor earlier. Having no experience dealing with this side of her, I try to stay firm to avoid further trouble. "Of course I remember. But rest assured, Miss Lydia, today was just an accident. Next time I'll be more careful not to disturb you and Mr. Victor." Lydia's expression soured even further. She let out a bizarre laugh and placed her hand on my waist. Through the thin fabric of my shirt, I could feel the heat radiating from her palm. "Julian, I remember you saying you would never betray me, that you would never leave me, right?" I looked down, meeting her aggressive gaze. "But we've already signed the divorce papers." Naturally, those words no longer hold any value. "Then what have you been pretending for these past few days? To remind me of the divorce? Or have you fallen in love with me?" Lydia pressed on, her sharp eyes drilling into me. "Not at all, Miss Lydia. I think you've misunderstood. This marriage was a part of your plan from beginning to end." Whatever she was calculating, her emotions were impossible to grasp. Yet, she held the fate of my entire family in her hands. That was the sole reason I was forced to agree to this 1 year charade. "Very well," Lydia spat out sarcastically. "Julian, remember those words. I believe you are a sensible man. So, for this remaining year, fulfill your responsibilities as a husband properly." I'd always thought that even without love, the 5 years I spent caring for her would count for something, that things wouldn't turn out too badly. However, Lydia's current rage seemed entirely unprovoked. I suspected Victor might have whispered something behind my back earlier, but that didn't quite add up. Victor only targeted me because I held the title of Lydia's husband. He couldn't possibly fathom just how little I actually meant to her. But after that little test earlier, Victor had surely gotten the answer he wanted. Thinking back, he probably wouldn't bother me much more. "I understand," I said, following Lydia into the master bedroom. By the time I finished showering and stepped back out, she was already fast asleep. The only light in the room came from a single, dim bedside lamp. This had been Lydia's habit ever since the accident. During those years when she was fragile and weak, even with me by her side, she always insisted I leave a light on for her. I watched her sleeping face for a moment before slowly lying down on the other side of the bed. I expected to stay awake until dawn, but in the silence, a heavy drowsiness soon overtook me. I dreamed I was holding a girl's hand, playing carefree on a beach. I knew these were memories from before I was forced to marry Lydia, the girl who vanished from my life the very day of my wedding. For years, despite my best efforts, I could find no trace of her. Just as the dream reached its sweetest moment, a sudden chill ran down my spine, jolting me awake. Lydia was already up. She was leaning against the headboard, staring at me with an unreadable expression. I was startled, and before I could even catch my breath, her cold voice cut through the air. "Who gave you permission to sleep next to me? I let you in here to serve me. If you can't even do that, you're truly useless. Get out." When Lydia stops pretending, she is always this volatile. I couldn't grasp her thoughts, but not having to share a room with her was actually a relief. I scrambled out of bed, still groggy from sleep. In my daze, I nearly slammed into the nightstand. Luckily, I only stumbled slightly. Once I regained my footing, I left without looking back. Consequently, I completely missed seeing Lydia's hand. She had reached out halfway toward me, only to force it back down. The next day, Lydia left for the office early. Although she had moved aggressively to crush all dissent within the group on her first day as chairwoman, Lydia's cousin, Vivian, wasn't one to give up easily. Not to mention the veteran shareholders who supported Vivian and were quietly causing trouble. Fortunately, Lydia had formed an alliance with the Vance family, Victor's family. Without it, securing her position in the low group would not have been so easy. Because I hadn't slept well the night before, the moment I met Nathan, he noticed the dark circles under my eyes. "Julian, you didn't spend all night moonlighting as a thief, did you?" Nathan asked. "I'm just a bit tired," I offered as a half-baked excuse. "It's been a while since I've worked, so I stayed up late reviewing my resume." "Don't push yourself too hard. With your skills, I'm sure you'll thrive in our company," Nathan said, patting my shoulder with a relaxed smile. I certainly believed in my own abilities, but I suddenly thought about Lydia staying home all night. Even though nothing actually happened between us, in Victor's eyes, it was likely a provocative signal. I worried he would look for a way to cause trouble. Sure enough, as Nathan and I finished the interview and stepped out, Victor's bodyguard was already waiting for me. "Mr. Julian, my master invites you to the tea house for a chat. Please follow us." The bodyguard was a towering man, nearly half a head taller than me. As he looked down at me, his brow twitched with a faint, condescending smirk that made my skin crawl. Nathan's temper flared instantly. He let out a dry, mocking laugh. "Oh wow. Some dogs spend so much time around their masters that they learn to mimic a human shape and start thinking they're people. If I didn't know better, I'd think you were actually important. Trash should know its place, and we aren't a landfill." Nathan's stinging words caused the bodyguard's face to darken. "Mr. Julian, my master's invitation is sincere. I suggest you don't be ungrateful. And keep your friend on a leash. If he offends the wrong person, he'll run into some very big trouble." I let out a cold laugh. When a stray dog with no manners jumps out to bark at people, it's only natural for my friend to shout back. "Why are you getting so angry? Are you identifying as that dog?" Once the bodyguard left with a face pale with rage, Nathan looked at me, raising an eyebrow with a grin. "I didn't expect you not to stop me. I thought you'd just endure it again. If we run into that pair of trash bags next time, we should just keep cussing them out. It feels great." I was genuinely amused and smiled brightly. Right. When it comes to winning an argument, who could ever beat you? You've been the champion since we were kids. In truth, my attitude toward Lydia or Victor was simply one of indifference. Because I didn't care, I didn't want to waste my breath. Victor just wanted to flaunt his relationship with Lydia and jab at me with a few insults. If I let those words go in one ear and out the other, I could live in peace. Taking them to heart would just be exhausting. I knew Nathan was standing up for me, and while I didn't feel it was necessary to get angry over people like that, I appreciated it. Victor wanted me to be jealous. By refusing to give him that satisfaction, I was getting the best revenge possible. Still, seeing my best friend demand justice for me certainly made me happy. I didn't want Nathan to be dragged into this. After all, Victor was an arrogant man. If I humiliated him, he would naturally look for a chance to retaliate. "Julian, come quickly and taste this tea. See if it suits your palate." In the tea house, Victor was smiling brightly as he directed a tea master to pour me a hot cup. The tea a man like Mr. Vance offered was certainly no ordinary blend, but it was a pity I was too unrefined to truly appreciate such things. "I've heard you enjoy tea tasting," I replied with a polite smile. Everyone knew this tea house was a gift from Lydia to him. She spared no expense, sourcing rare tea leaves from across the country just to put them in his hands. Her devotion to Victor was common knowledge. Instead of getting angry at my remark, Victor smiled at me. "I heard you've been looking for a job lately. Are you short on pocket money? Why not just say a word to Sister Lydia? She wouldn't be happy if she knew you were struggling. If you find it awkward to ask her, you can tell me. I might not have much talent, but I'm certainly not short on cash. Just open your mouth, and as your younger brother, I won't let you suffer." I pursed my lips, staring at the black card he had pushed across the table toward me. I found it almost comical. I never expected Victor to play the by someone off trope straight out of soap opera. "I appreciate your concern, Mr. Vance," I said, "but I don't like receiving benefits I haven't worked for. My marriage to Miss Lowe was merely an agreement. I've received what I deserved. Anything extra is unnecessary." With that, I slid off the jade ring that the Lowe family matriarch had given me on our wedding day. I pushed it back toward Victor along with the black card. My actions left not only Victor, but everyone around us stunned. Even the bodyguards behind him looked surprised. Victor clearly hadn't expected me to hand over the things he coveted so easily. Nevertheless, he smiled as he accepted them. Julian, don't be like that. I've always respected you as an older brother. If you're in trouble, it's only right for a younger brother to help. I suspected Victor had never encountered an opponent like me. Someone so sensible. Before he could make another move, I had already staged a graceful retreat. At this point, even Victor couldn't make any unreasonable demands. In his heart, he probably looked down on me, thinking I was weak. If that was the impression I left, then all the better. Victor poured me another cup of tea himself. Notice the necklace you're wearing is quite nice too. Why don't you sell it to your younger brother? Hearing that, I instinctively moved my hand to protect the necklace. This is just a cheap market find. If Mr. Vance likes jewelry, I'm sure Miss Lowe would be happy to buy you something far better. This necklace was a gift from the girl in my memories, a companion that had stayed with me for over 10 years. Although her face had blurred with time, there was absolutely no way I would ever let this necklace go. Victor let out a soft laugh, his eyes glinting with predatory resolve. Julian, you should know, if there is something Victor Vance wants, there has never been a thing he couldn't get. Hearing him, it was clear he intended to take it by force. I immediately dropped my polite mask, looking at him with an expressionless gaze. Mr. Vance, it's best not to be too greedy. Victor didn't care. He simply waved his hand, and his two bodyguards instantly closed in on me. One of them even reached out directly, intending to snatch it from my neck. However, just as his hand was about to make contact, I ducked, dove across the table, and lunged directly in front of Victor. Before anyone could react, I landed a sharp left hook square on his face. His delicate features bruised instantly. You dare! Victor stared at me in disbelief, his eyes wide and filled with pure malice. Just because I don't look for trouble doesn't mean I lack a spine. You crossed the line this time. With that, I pulled back my hand as a flicker of fear finally crept into Victor's eyes. I turned and walked away without a single backward glance. It didn't take long for rumors to spread that Victor and I had come to blows at the tea house over a romantic rivalry. Consequently, when Lydia burst into my room in a fit of rage, I wasn't surprised. She was clearly there to demand justice for Victor. I prepared myself for whatever she was going to throw at me. But the punishment never came. Instead, I heard her voice, thick with suppressed anger, questioning me. The agreement between us and the jade ring Grandma gave you back then. You gave them all to Victor? I hadn't expected those to be the first words out of her mouth. Thinking back, I figured she had wanted to surprise Victor with him a year from now, and my early disclosure had ruined her plans. So, I explained, Miss Lowe, there was never anything between us to begin with. Mr. Vance is sincere about you. I'm sure you wouldn't want to see him upset or troubled because of me. Julian, after all these years of being married to me, do you still view our relationship as nothing more than a transaction? Are you really that eager to leave me? I looked at her baffled. I had no idea where this irrational anger was coming from. Isn't that exactly what it is? I shot back. In the beginning, wasn't this marriage contract something you forced upon me? In a strange silence that followed, Lydia dazed for a moment, a trace of hesitation flickering through her eyes. But it vanished quickly. Victor just wanted a necklace. You should have just given it to him. It's not worth anything anyway. I'll buy you a different one. More expensive, more beautiful. Deal. Absolutely not, I said, enunciating every syllable with cold finality. The jade ring my grandmother gave you is worth billions, and you handed it over to someone else without a second thought. Yet, you won't part with that cheap piece of junk. Lydia narrowed her eyes, her gaze suddenly turning dangerous. Julian, are you keeping a memento from someone else behind my back? Miss Lowe, this is something I've worn since I was a child. It is my personal property. I believe I have the right to refuse this forced transaction. I faced her head on, refusing to back down, my resolve unwavering. I hope you can respect the 5 years I spent caring for you without complaint. Don't make me hate you in these final days of our time together. Lydia knitted her brows, her eyes scanning my face for a long moment before she gave me one last, deep look. If you don't want others targeting you, don't flaunt it so much in the future. With that, she slammed the door and left without looking back. Watching her figure disappear, My eyes welled up for the first time. In 5 years, this was the first time I had ever refused a request from Lydia. But to protect this necklace, I wouldn't hesitate to stand against her. My only regret was that so much time had passed. I had forgotten the face of the person who gave it to me, and I had no idea where they were now. This necklace was the only thing I truly owned. Fortunately, Lydia didn't take further action. I heard that to compensate Victor, she purchased a unique, custom-made necklace worth tens of billions at an international auction just for him. And for his birthday party, she gifted him a gemstone crown from a famous foreign collection. Lydia's extravagant displays of affection for Victor sent shockwaves through the country for a long time. As her legal husband in the eyes of the public, I couldn't escape the pitying looks of others. When I ran into Victor again, he was as arrogant and self-satisfied as ever. What caught my attention, however, was the necklace around his neck. Whoa, Julian, isn't that piece that kid is wearing the one-of-a-kind necklace worth tens of billions? Nathan whispered, his eyes wide with shock. I figured that given Lydia's feelings for him, she certainly wouldn't give him a fake just to play a prank. No wonder she warned me that day. It turned out she had a plan all along. Who could have known? I pulled back my gaze and calmly walked to my seat. But as soon as I sat down, I heard people nearby gossiping about Victor's necklace. It seemed everyone was convinced. Miss Lowe truly adored him beyond measure. Someone buys a necklace that expensive without even blinking and hands it over as a gift. If that's not love, what is? Tell me about it. That Vance kid is incredibly lucky. The moment Miss Lowe recovered, he managed to slide right into her good graces. Keep it down. If someone hears you, I won't be able to protect you. The gossiping voices gradually faded. I turned my head and saw the two people who had been snickering a moment ago looking at me with embarrassment. They had likely realized who I was. I gave them a polite, slight nod. Please continue. Don't mind me. After all, the things Victor wanted to flaunt weren't worth a cent to me. I didn't want to waste energy arguing. However, my silence was misinterpreted as a sign of deep suffering. Seeing this, no one dared to say another word. I sighed inwardly. It seemed my jilted husband image wouldn't change until the divorce from Lydia was official. Since the alliance between the Vance family and Lydia formed, they had become an unstoppable force. Everyone in the room was busy sucking up to Victor. Even those who had just been mocking him behind his back were now shamelessly flattering him. I sat alone, watching them celebrate, thinking that this was fine. Everyone was happy in their own way. The claim that Lydia doted on Victor wasn't without merit. Beyond the grand gestures, every dish and every drink at this party was something Victor loved. To go to such lengths. Who wouldn't believe Lydia was head over heels for him? Soon my glass was empty. Just as I stood up to get another, a slender, pale hand stopped me. Julian, remember your stomach isn't great. Drink less. I looked up in surprise and saw a familiar silhouette I hadn't seen in years suddenly materialize before my eyes. Seeing Rose again, a face that had been buried deep in my memories, I thought I was dreaming. Instinctively, I reached out to touch those familiar brows and eyes, but I pulled back in fear. Is it really you, Rose? I asked, my voice trembling. Yes, it's me. Rose quickly caught my hand. The cool sensation of her touch finally brought my hovering heart back down to earth. I'm sorry. I'm late. I shook my head gently, still unable to process the reality. The person I had spent years searching for had appeared before me so easily. You're still as dazed as ever, aren't you? Rose gently pinched my hand and let out a soft sigh. Nathan told me things haven't been going well for you at the Lowe house, that you're always being bullied. Are you stupid? If someone bullies you, you have to fight back. Have you forgotten everything I taught you? You haven't grown up at all after all these years. I wasn't bullied. I'm doing just fine. I gripped her hand, tight, so tight, I never wanted to let go. I had a million questions for her, but I knew this wasn't the time or place for a trip down memory lane. I glanced toward Nathan, who was standing faithfully behind Rose. It turned out that guy really had been bought off. He was a spy planted right by my side. On the secluded second-floor balcony of the villa, Rose and I stood side by side in silence. Nathan had already volunteered to stand by the stairs, claiming to be our lookout. After a long while, I was the one to break the silence. Rose, where have you been all these years? I never stopped looking for you. I'm sorry, Julian. As for where I went, I can't tell you just yet. A flicker of hesitation crossed Rose's eyes. But I can tell you this. I have been watching over you the entire time. This meant that throughout all those years, Rose knew everything that was happening between me and Lydia. I pursed my lips. I had so much to ask her just a moment ago, but now the words were stuck in my throat, leaving a bitter taste. Finally, the only thing I could manage was an awkward question. Then why did you suddenly appear here today? Because I couldn't wait any longer, Rose replied, her voice laced with indignation. Seeing the way Lydia and Victor treat you, I couldn't stand it. I was stunned. In my memory, Rose was just like Nathan and me, kids who grew up in ordinary apartment complexes. But now, her status and wealth seemed to rival the low group itself. A person doesn't just become that powerful overnight unless they were standing at the top of the social ladder from the very beginning. Following that train of thought, I think I've realized why she disappeared for so many years. As that possibility took root, the insecurity in my heart finally began to vanish. As long as she didn't leave me of her own free will, that was enough. Whatever the reason, if she was willing to tell me, I would understand. However, Rose didn't dwell on her own story. Instead, she made a solemn promise. Julian, trust me. Give me a little more time, and I will definitely get you out of Lydia's grasp. Rose's voice was the polar opposite of Lydia's deep, cold tone. Her voice carried a natural warmth and tenderness. When she made a promise like that, you couldn't help but believe her. I nodded without a second of hesitation. All right, I'll wait for you. Thinking back on my marriage to Lydia, it really was somewhat farcical. Years ago, while Nathan and I were at the hospital for a checkup, I happened to encounter Lydia after a car accident. She had been left in a vegetative state, and I witnessed Vivian leading a group of people to insult and humiliate her. As I walked past her room, Lydia suddenly lunged out and clung to me, refusing to let go. Just like that, I was accidentally dragged into the power struggles of the elite. Shortly after, Lydia brought the Lowe family matriarch to my house to propose marriage. When I refused, they went to my parents, using a combination of threats and financial incentives to force me into signing the marriage contract. For 5 years, though we were husband and wife on paper, I was essentially a full-time caregiver for a woman who had lost her mental faculties. In exchange, Lydia and the matriarch provided substantial financial support to my family. This was exactly why my parents didn't want me to divorce her. Having grown accustomed to a life of luxury, they couldn't bear the thought of returning to their previous struggles. If Lydia hadn't woken up and presented me with a divorce agreement to make room for Victor, I might never have escaped this situation. Lying in bed, my mind continued to replay the events of the past several years. Recently, the bond between Lydia and Victor has grown even tighter. In the eyes of the public, there is no longer any room for me. Honestly, this outcome isn't bad. With the support of the Vance family, Lydia is gradually solidifying her position, and the whispers behind her back have stopped. Perhaps our contract will end even sooner than expected. While I was lost in thought, the bedroom door was suddenly pushed open, and a figure stepped inside. I scrambled to sit up, but before I could turn on the lamp, I was enveloped by a familiar scent. She whispered softly, "Julian, it's been so long since I've held you like this." Back when Lydia was mentally impaired, she suffered from nightmares every night. She would crawl into my room and beg me to coax her to sleep. Only then could she find peace. If I refused, she would grip my hand and repeat, Brother Julian, until I gave in. Back then, I only saw her as a spoiled younger sister. After she fell asleep, I would usually sleep on the sofa and slip back to my own room before dawn, details Lydia likely never knew. But what was wrong with her today? Why wasn't she with Victor? Why was she coming here to put on this emotional display for me? Julian, don't leave me, okay? Vivian controls 40% of the company's shares, and a third of the shareholders side with her. I need the Vance family support. You understand why I have to do this, don't you? That divorce agreement I gave you. I only did that because I was angry that you always had someone else in your heart. I just want you to look at me seriously. Lydia reeked of alcohol. As she spoke, her breath brushed against my neck, making me feel extremely uncomfortable. Miss Lowe, could you please stand up before we talk? I pushed against her shoulders, but she only tightened her grip on me. I don't want to, Julian. Ever since I returned to the company, you haven't wanted to have a decent conversation with me. Today, I even saw you with another woman. Do you really want to leave me? As she spoke, she nuzzled my cheek. I know you've been suffering lately, but if I want to hold my ground at the low group, I still have to rely on a Vance family. Even if Victor and I get married in a year, the person I love most in my heart will still only be you. I had never seen Lydia with such a tender gaze. But under that look, I only felt a sense of dread. From beginning to end, Lydia had no intention of letting me go. No, Lydia, get up first. Panicked, I tried to push her face away as it drew closer. Just as I was about to use force, a frantic knocking sounded at the door. Miss Lowe, you need to go to the Vance residence right away. They called saying Mr. Vance is heavily intoxicated and causing a scene because he can't find you. Even the security team can't hold him back. Lydia stiffened, her brows furrowing instinctively. After a long pause, she finally relaxed her grip, leaned down to plant a kiss on my forehead, and stood up. I'll go see what's happening. If you're tired, go to sleep. Wait for me to come back, and we'll finish our conversation. But when Lydia left this time, she didn't return for over a week. When I saw her again, she looked quite haggard. Perhaps because she had doted on Victor too much, his arrogance had grown, making him exhausting to deal with. But none of that was my concern. I had a prearranged date with Rose to go hiking and watch the sunset. I only spared a passing glance at Lydia, sitting silently in the living room before rushing to get ready. Where are you going? Lydia stepped over the sofa and grabbed my arm. There isn't a clause in our agreement about reporting my itinerary, is there? So please let go. I firmly pried her hand off, swung my backpack over my shoulder, and walked past her. You can't. I won't allow you to go. Lydia's face was filled with panic, an emotion I rarely saw on her. Compared to the time she was pushed into the water and I saved her despite not knowing how to swim, leaving her terrified all night, the fear in her eyes this time was even more palpable. Although I had long suspected that she had only been feigning her innocence for those 5 years, in that moment, her anxiety for me felt real. Is it Rose? Is she coming for you? Are you planning to leave me and run away with her? Lydia's eyes turned a bloodshot red. No, Julian, I'm telling you, you aren't going anywhere. Do you hear me? I won't allow you to leave me. I won't allow it. Her hands gripped my shoulders with increasing intensity, as if she wouldn't hesitate to break my bones if I uttered a single no. I recognized the obsessive possessiveness in her, but I didn't pity it. It was like a child having their toy taken away. Even if it's not a toy they particularly like, they still arrogantly declare their ownership. To Lydia, I was the one who had cared for her for 5 years. In her subconscious, I had simply become an object that belonged to her. Miss Lowe, don't you see how meaningless this is? I sighed, no longer struggling, but turning to look her straight in the eye. I was exhausted from playing these games. If you hadn't used those dirty tactics years ago, how could I have ever been entangled with you? I played my role. I played husband for 5 long years. Now that you have everything you ever wanted, what more could you possibly need? Lydia was left speechless for a moment. She stammered in disbelief. I know dragging you into the Lowe family's mess was my fault. But you cared for me so devotedly for 5 years. I thought at least you'd feel something for me. Her voice was thick with emotion. Miss Lowe, please don't forget that this was merely a transaction. You provided the money, I provided the care. That's only natural. I replied, my face a blank mask. I don't think anyone truly falls for the person who forced them into a cage. Do you think we're in some idol drama? Are we playing out a marriage first, love later trope for the elite? Don't be ridiculous. Your blatant infidelity alone would have killed any potential affection I might have felt. Do you know why I never cared when Victor provoked me? It's because I don't care about you. Everything you two did in front of me was nothing more than a clown show. With that, I forcefully pried her hands off me and walked away. 1 year later. Hey, did you hear the news? Word is Lydia, the head of the Lowe group, is finally marrying the Vance heir next month. Are you sure? I heard the Vances and the Lowes have been at each other's throats lately. My uncle, who gardens for the Vances, said Lydia and Victor had a massive blowout in the garden recently. If that's true, this is going to be a hell of a show. Wasn't it Victor who climbed his way up through all those scandals? Talk about karma, huh? Actually, I also heard that the new lover Lydia is keeping on the side looks remarkably like her ex-husband. What do you think? I think I'd better sell off my Vance family shares soon. At this rate, they're going to ruin the company sooner or later. At the auction, the conversation of several people nearby suddenly drifted into my ears. I paused my thumb over my phone screen for a split second before resuming. "There's no rush," I said softly to the person on the other end of the line. "Just drive slowly and stay safe. All right, if you see anything you like later, just buy it. Consider it an early birthday gift from me." Rose's gentle laughter echoed through the phone, as tender as ever. I smiled back, reminded her once more to drive carefully, and hung up. My mind involuntarily drifted back to the conversation I had just overheard. Lydia and Victor were getting married next month. I wasn't particularly surprised. Since I cut ties with Lydia a year ago, I had moved in with Nathan. Throughout that time, no matter how much Lydia tried to seek me out, I maintained a cold, distant attitude. As time passed, her visits became fewer and farther between. It wasn't until the final day the contract was in effect that I saw her again, standing in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau. She looked as though she wanted to say something to me, but Victor pulled her away. And so, we hurriedly finalized our divorce certificate. It turned out she went out and found a stand-in for me afterward. Is this what they call peak obsession? The thought sent a sudden shiver down my spine. For a long time, I thought I might never have to see Lydia's face again. After all, the chances of our paths crossing were slim. After the divorce, I reintegrated into society and joined Rose's company. As I had suspected, Rose's background was anything but simple. The reason she had lived in that ordinary apartment complex with me back then was merely a trial the wealthy impose on their heirs. However, after witnessing me being ensnared by Lydia, Rose proactively requested a different form of trial, one that would allow her to gain the power to challenge the low group as quickly as possible. During those 5 years of my marriage, Rose had actually been watching over me in secret. Her informant was none other than the traitor, Nathan. He knew perfectly well that I was searching for Rose, yet he never breathed a word. "Have you been waiting long?" Before I knew it, Rose was sitting beside me, handing me a warm cup of coffee. The weather had turned quite chilly lately. Holding the warm cup, I snapped back to reality and looked into her gentle eyes. "Your hands are freezing too," I said with a smile. "Why didn't you get a cup for yourself? Once your hands are warm, won't mine be warm too when you hold them?" Rose replied earnestly. The smile on my face deepened. Even though I'm divorced, Rose has proposed to me several times, but I haven't said yes yet. For one, I've just escaped a failed marriage. I can't be certain the Lowe family isn't just like the Vance family. Even if Rose still has feelings for me, who's to say I'm not just an unfulfilled wish from her youth? I didn't want to waste another 5 years like I did with Lydia. Besides, I felt there was a gap of several years between us. Both our feelings and our lives had changed. Instead of rushing, we could simply be together for a while and let things happen naturally. If we both still felt the same way down the line, it wouldn't be too late to discuss the next step. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Lydia and Victor walk in hand. Neither of them looked happy. In fact, there was a trace of blood at the corner of Lydia's mouth. I wondered if they'd had a physical altercation on the way here, but seeing her in such a state brought me a sense of peace. Someone like her deserves to be handled by a troublemaker like Victor. "Rose, aren't you going on a business trip soon?" I asked suddenly. "Yes, but it's just a negotiated project. I'll be back in 3 days. Is there anything you want? I'll buy it for you." Rose was still holding my hand, and, as always, she looked me directly in the eyes when she spoke. I was constantly touched by these small details. They say you can see love in someone's eyes. No matter how much someone pretends, the truth eventually leaks out through the details. Rose was different. She was always wholehearted with me. "Actually, there's something I'd like you to bring back." I nodded seriously. "Tell me." Rose raised an eyebrow and leaned in to kiss my cheek. "Whatever it is, I'll do my best to get it." I pretended to ponder for a moment, and when I saw her expression turn increasingly anxious, I laughed. "Then, on the day you return, bring me a bouquet of flowers and a pair of rings." "What?" Rose was stunned. "Can't you do it?" I teased, poking her soft cheek. "I was thinking if you could manage that, I'd finally agree to marry you." The moment the words left my mouth, Rose's face lit up brilliantly. Forgetting that we were in the middle of an auction, she threw her arms around me and covered my face with kisses. "I can do it! I can do it!" she repeated over and over, sounding slightly frantic with joy. I let her embrace and kiss me, ignoring the surprised and envious looks from the crowd around us. I simply smiled and held her back. "Then it's a promise. I'll wait for you to come home, and then we'll get married. This is the end of the story. How do you feel about this story? Please leave your comment. Julian took care of Lydia for 5 years, and Lydia abandoned him. That's terrible. She deserves that. Julian deserves someone better, right? Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.